I was asked how I think about the differences between risks and dangers. So, here it is. Hi there, everyone. I'm Jason. May is Mental Health Awareness Month, and we dedicate that month to talking about some of the mental aspects of climbing. Risk professionals will talk about risks, or the possibility of an undesirable event, and dangers or hazards, the potential source of the risk. Now, to be clear, I'm not a risk professional, but I grew up with one. My dad was a nuclear engineer from the early 1970s until just before 2010. He spent a career looking at mechanical risks, human operator risks, and even risks from terrorism. And while he and his colleagues paid attention to danger, the potential causes, for sure, they spent a lot more time talking about probabilities, which includes, but is bigger than just the dangers. In fact, their engineering formula for calculating risk was probability times consequence. So for me, I focus on that equation, probability times consequence, and what I find, and I dare say what my dad found too, is that for low probability but high consequence hazards, let it be a climbing anchor failure or an avalanche on a big mountain or a nuclear reactor meltdown, humans tend to get distracted by the consequence because our intuitive understanding of probability is often very flawed. We know that flying is statistically safer than driving, but far fewer of us get nervous about driving than do about flying. We know that climbing anchor failure is very rare, but we spend a lot of time worrying about material strengths and anchor configurations. I know which of my videos do well. In the former case, I think it's because of the visceral perception of danger that being tens of thousands of feet in the air brings to our reptilian brains. In the latter case, I think it's because humans like to focus our attention on things we have more control over rather than less, because we feel more immediate sense of safety that way. By definition, controllable things are easier to manage than things we can only influence, like a climbing partner's behavior or their own attitudes towards risk. What all of that can unwittingly lead to is people spending nearly all of their time trying to avoid or mitigate the highest consequence hazards while not spending commensurate time mitigating the lower consequence but higher probability ones. There is a reason most accidents happen from chains of small events. First, we get our approach started too late after sunrise. Then the thawing cycle leads to a single step that breaks through the ice into a cold stream. We take off the wet sock and the heat from our uphill travel keeps us warm, but then the surprise storm moves in. Then comes the frostbite and lack of mobility, then full exposure. The big high consequence hazards just don't happen that often until you start making choices that ramp up those probabilities. I guess what I'm saying is that, in my experience, people get stuck in their risk assessments in two fundamental ways. First, they might only focus on consequence and leave out the fact that a low consequence series of events multiplied by high probabilities still equals big risk. A few years ago, a rope access professional was, rather rudely, arguing about how climbers should use rope bags when climbing technical glaciers because the coils we often carry make letting out additional rope difficult, which adds another time-consuming step to crevasse rescue. But my point was that, unlike in rope access, the far higher probability problem comes from a simple lead fall. So keeping the rope out of the way, rather than in some additional sack dangling about our body to get caught on us or equipment or terrain, makes the most sense. So maybe spending more time worrying about being highly efficient, getting into and out of climbing setups and systems, rather than bomb-proofing our systems, would make sense in, say, an alpine environment where the high probability risks are weather, darkness, thawing of seracs, and the commensurate thawing and falling of rocks. The second way I see people get stuck is by focusing only on the controllable rather than the influenceable. My dad once did a study on what reactor operators would do if there was a fire in the power plant control room. The end result was changes to procedures, hardware like control boards, and training. It was a complicated risk to mitigate, and there was no perfect solution. This is why avalanche professionals have shifted avalanche education strongly towards subjective hazards, like having a backup plan. Without a backup plan, parties are much more likely to proceed when conditions are marginal. They are much more likely to turn around and go with Plan B if such a backup option exists. But influencing people to make 2 or even 3 plans for every outing is hard. I guess my big challenge to us for today, then, is to think about what small things we can do to keep ourselves safer. Let's not miss that pre-sunrise start so the mountain won't thaw. Let's spend the time learning and practicing efficient systems for how we climb. Let's make those backup plans. Maybe let's not lose the probability side of the probability times consequence equation. But you can tell us what you think in the comments. Thanks for watching this video. Please like, subscribe, and share if you want to support us. For more information, you can go to our website at www.shortguysbetaworks.com. You can check out a related video on complexity rationing, one way I try to apply what I think about probabilities and consequences to my life, or maybe take a look at our entire Mental Health Awareness Month series. We'll see you next week and keep on getting more out of that big outside.